Hello, my name is Suzette, but when I was little, everybody called me Susie. I am Laird Jenkins' youngest child. My dad always lived in the present, which means he didn't often talk about his past, the things he had overcome, or all the work he had done. When I finally knew his story, I admired him so much. He went from being just my dad to my hero. My dad was born in a hospital across from the Tabernacle block in the shadow of the Logan Temple. He said it always was such a special thought in his mind that his life started so close to the Lord's house. He was brought home in a basket on a bicycle. His father, John, was a music teacher, and his mother, Ruth, was a homemaker. Laird was the second oldest. His older sister's name was Afton, and later he would have three younger brothers, Ray, Ronald, and Bruce. To put things in perspective, Laird was born 3 months after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and it was a time of uncertainty. As a schoolteacher, John Jenkins worked 9 months of the year and then had to find work to make ends meet. The family bought 2 acres of land for about $200, which was a big undertaking, and Laird said the family went without some things to be able to make the payments. But with that 2 acres, they could have a small farm.
Now, we had a cow. It was a Guernsey cow. We called her Bossy. And we had a little shed where my dad would go in and milk the cow. And because I was the oldest one, I had to learn how to milk the cow. And that was a lot of squeezing and help. It was really hard for me to that one because I was so young, but I can remember my dad would get foam on top of the milk, but I couldn't do that because I couldn't squeeze, but I eventually did. But I remember my mother would, from the cream, she'd made chocolates, homemade chocolates, and she'd put them in the freezer. Oh, I loved her homemade chocolates.
My dad had to earn his own money to get the things he wanted. He had a paper route and saved up enough money to buy his own bicycle. One of the families on his route was a military family, temporarily living in the area. Their daughter's name was Daphne, and she would play in the yard with a black cape. He did not know her then, but they would meet later. Dad wanted to learn to hunt and fish, something his father did not do, but his friends and grandparents did. His family didn't have any extra money to buy Laird a fishing rod, but he found one by the creek and it was his treasure. He happened upon a book about Alaska and saw pictures of all the big animals and dreamed of being able to go there someday. When Laird was 10 years old, he had an accident. Laird was picking apples in an old tree and he stepped on a dead branch. It broke beneath him and he fell 2 stories. An ambulance was called and Laird was taken to the Logan Hospital where they took x-rays and found a blood clot at the base of his brain. They told Laird's parents that he was seriously injured and he was immediately sent to Salt Lake City with his father John. Grandpa Fletcher stayed behind and called all his family that could come, and they had a special prayer that Laird would be okay. When the ambulance reached the Layton City area, Laird had stopped breathing, but shortly after started breathing again. Apparently, as the family had gathered for prayer and it was given, Laird came back to life. The doctors in Salt Lake were prepared to operate, but the doctors and Laird's father gave him another blessing. More x-rays were taken and no blood clot could be seen, and the swelling in the area receded. When Laird woke up in the hospital, it was obvious something was wrong. He was wondering where he was and why he was in the hospital, not remembering what had happened. The nurse came to change his bed sheets and told him to stand up. When he tried, he fell to the floor and was unable to get up. Laird had to lay on the couch all that summer because every time he got up, he was too dizzy to stand. His family didn't have the money for follow-up treatments. When he went back to 6th grade in the fall, he could no longer remember what 2 + 2 was, and he had forgotten how to read. At the time, it was questioned if my father would ever be able to learn these skills again or be able to thrive in life. His 6th-grade teacher was truly kind to him. He would sit with my dad during recess with a big ball and practice throwing it back and forth to help my father gain back some of his coordination. His mother would help him with his homework. Laird said his eyesight was not the same. He could only see a few letters at a time on the page. We will never know all of his struggles, but Laird graduated high school in 1960. The year Laird graduated from high school, he joined the Army. He was given a military uniform and told to report for some preliminary training. When he arrived, he was quite the sight, because nothing fit him. The pants were inches above his socks, and the sleeves were up to his elbows, and his hat perched atop his head rather than sitting down around his ears. He served 3 months, and then was given an honorable medical discharge. He did a year of college before submitting his mission papers, and he could not have been more pleased with where the Lord wanted him to serve, the Alaska-Canadian Mission. During his mission, my father was assigned to Vancouver, Saanich on Vancouver Island, and Quesnel, British Columbia. Because of his vision, Laird struggled with reading out loud. To compensate, he memorized all the missionary scriptures. He would turn the page, show the scripture to whomever he was teaching, and then recite it. Laird tells the story of Christina Sadler, a 12-year-old member who picked Logan berries all summer to earn enough money for the ferry to take her entire family to hear President Hugh B. Brown in an area conference. Laird took her father up to meet President Brown. Christina's dad joined the church. Laird and Christina met again in 2015. Laird wrote to his grandparents, "I know my mission has been the happiest time of my life. When we baptized the Lee family, I was so overjoyed I could hardly contain myself." Quesnel was a gold mining and ranching area with 34 members. Laird worked to help the members grow the church. He wrote, "The first Sunday I gave the opening prayer, directed the music, gave a talk, blessed and passed the sacrament, and taught the Sunday school class. In Quesnel, my father had to carry water from a well and heat it on a wood stove. The water froze before it hit the ground when he threw it out. They had no electricity and had to study the scriptures using lanterns. He enjoyed a river right under his window he could catch fish in. When he returned to Vancouver, he made a TV appearance. Laird was the voice of Gizmo the Mormon robot. It was the first time the church had ever been on TV in that area. Laird's mission experience gave him the opportunity to live and work in a big city like Vancouver and a bush community like Quesnel. He loved his mission and the opportunity it gave him to teach the gospel.
I came to Logan that fall to attend Utah State University and to live with my grandmother, Daphne Amacher. We both attended the second ward for single college students. Because Laird had a car, he was tasked to pick up some young ladies and take them to a church activity. When Laird saw me waiting on the Institute steps for a ride, he thought, "That's the girl I should marry." Laird asked me out and took me first to hear President N. Eldon Tanner speak, and second deer hunting with Ronald as a chaperone, and third to a formal dance, and then he asked me if I would take his pin. "What exactly does that mean?" I asked. "It means we would be engaged." I said, "How old do you think I am?" And he said, "About my age?" I said, "No, I'm 18. "Oh." So I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. And Laird was okay with that and didn't pressure me. And in the meantime, he introduced me to all of his friends. We spent a lot of time together, and we enjoyed working together. I would go with him to his work and help feed the mink. Then we would go and clean my grandmother's house. Then we'd wash his car. His friends told him, "That's not how you date a girl." But I loved it. After 6 months of dating, I fasted, prayed, and asked Heavenly Father if I should marry Laird. I had an intense, warm, peaceful feeling. Next date, I asked Laird, "Is the offer still good?" We were married in September of 1965, and I had again those warm, comfortable feelings as we were being sealed in the temple, and I knew that we'd be together forever if we remained faithful. That was the most powerful part of our wedding day.
When Wally was born in 1966, the hospitals didn't want the fathers around during the birthing. But as soon as they brought him out, my father insisted on holding him in spite of the nurses' objections. Denise was born 2 years later in 1968, and Aaron would follow in 1971.
Laird had been attending Utah State University, but the increased reading and large lecture classes made it difficult for him to get good grades. Eventually, he was on academic probation, and shortly after our marriage, he was suspended. We talked about other career options like becoming an electrician, but he really wanted to finish college. I had just begun working for the Department of Audiology and Speech Pathology. I talked to Dr. Samuel Fletcher about Laird's brain injury, and he suggested they give Laird a nonverbal IQ test. The IQ test came back with very high scores and showed he had learning disabilities where the fall had damaged his auditory memory and language. Dr. Fletcher recommended some learning strategy and wrote a letter to the dean to get Laird readmitted to USU. Laird began using a tape recorder in class, and I helped him with the reading. He transferred his major to Audiology and Speech Pathology. The professors there were understanding and helped him. Once he got into clinical practice, he really excelled. He graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree. Then he spent another year taking postgraduate educational audiology classes.
On February 28, 1968, Laird found out that his brother Ray had died in Vietnam combat. He and Daphne immediately raced to his parents' house to be with them. Ray was a brother just younger than Laird, and they were very close. Laird had a feeling when Ray left for Vietnam that he would not see him again, but it still hurt when the news came. After graduation, Laird got a job teaching hard-of-hearing children in the Granite School District. After 5 years, Laird left teaching and worked full-time in contracting. He learned to lay carpet and hang drapes and got a contractor's license. Daphne's mother, Daphne Amacher, formed a small corporation with Laird, her son Mark, and Daphne as officers. The firm did interior design, and Laird and Mark did the installations for homes and businesses.
Okay, so here, again, this is Wally Jenkins with memories of my dad, Laird Jenkins. So from the time I was small, he always wanted to teach us how to work. And I remember when I was 6, from the time I was 6 till the time I was 11, he would take me with him to work to lay carpet. And of course, when I was little, there wasn't a whole lot I could do except pick up scraps. That was my job. But when I was 10 or 11, believe it or not, he had taught me enough that I could put down tack strip. I knew how to cut those and nail those down without smashing up the wall, and I could put down carpet padding.
We bought a house in Granger, Utah, and then, as a well-meaning surprise, Laird and Eileen, my mother, picked out and bought a fixer-upper in Bountiful. Laird never surprised me like that again. We remodeled and landscaped both of our Utah homes. We were blessed with another child, Benjamin, in 1976. With his contracting skills and wholesale accounts, Laird fixed up his parents' home. They didn't have much, and he wanted them to be comfortable. The house was about 100 years old, and he sandblasted it and painted it inside and out, and installed all new carpet and drapes. His mother was so grateful she gave him a big hug. This was special, because Laird's family did not express physical affection often. In 1978, Laird took an opportunity to turn an apartment complex into condos in Anchorage, Alaska. He took Wally with him during the summer. He had to fly back and forth a few times working on the job. He started helping the realtors find people to live in the condos. He loved working with people, and he realized not only was he good at remodeling and managing a crew, but he could do real estate and sell homes too. Laird bought a house at 1741 Crescent Circle, went back to Utah, gathered up the family, and drove the Alcan Road in a big gold van. I was 5 months pregnant, and in March of 1980, our daughter Suzette was born.
When we moved to Alaska, I did not like it. I was not happy here. And after several months of that, I remember kind of unloading on Dad and just dumping on him and telling him how miserable I was. And I remember him listening and really listening, not saying anything, just waiting until I was done. He asked me if I had talked to Heavenly Father about the problems I was having. And so for me, that question from Dad was the thing that, it was a catalyst to a spiritual journey for me that still continues.
There was a project to build a chapel assembled from cedar logs in Willow, Alaska. Laird supervised all the volunteer labor and the construction of the building. He worked through a very cold and snowy winter with help from the members of 2 stakes. He slept in a camper trailer, and the Relief Society cooked for all the crew working on the site. Our family went with him and helped during the summer.
In the early 80s, Dad became a realtor. In Alaska, he really blossomed. He bought into remote properties such as the Big Igloo and land in Willow. He also bought an army truck so we could get around that land. It was quite an adventure. Dad loved fishing in Alaska. He would bring the family along so we could fish with him. I remember falling asleep along the bank of the Kenai River. Dad would fish by me to make sure I didn't roll over and end up in the river. In 1985, the real estate market crashed. It's now called the Great Alaska Recession. Dad said so many people abandoned their houses and left the state, there should have been someone at the airport to collect all the keys. He reinvented himself and joined A.L. Williams, Primerica, to help people with life insurance and investments. Debt counseling was also part of it. Years later, he would share this story with his clients. I was just shy of 7 figures in debt after the housing market crashed. That was from the real estate alone. I was encouraged to file for bankruptcy, but I wanted to pay it all off. Not only did he repay it all, but he retired comfortably in the green. Dad was an honest man, and it was always important to him to do the right thing. During the same years, Mom had become very ill, and she stayed ill for most of the 80s. She was very discouraged about her health and ability to be a good mother and wife, but Dad took her hand and said, "Our marriage is eternal, and I will never leave you." In 1989, Laird became a grandpa. I remember when my parents got the news, they cried out with joy and threw their arms around each other.
Laird loved to hold babies. He was magical in getting them to fall asleep. Wally's kids would come over while their parents went to college. Denise came up to visit with her kids, and we would go down to visit and help her. Shelby remembers Grandpa bouncing her on his knees and singing a song called Horsey, Horsey, which is a song he had sung with all of his children. Angela is an adopted grandchild, and she remembered how Laird just embraced her and was so excited for her last name to become Jenkins. In 1990, Laird was called to serve in the Alaska Bush District, which was a throwback to his time in Quesnel on his mission. The Alaska Bush District, the largest geographic district in the church, reached from Point Barrow all along the coast and out to the last island on the Aleutian chain called Attu, covering some 2,200 miles. He had a chance to visit Kotzebue, Bethel, and Adak several times. This assignment really let him know the gospel was being taught to every corner and island of the sea. The talent that lived in those little branches was indescribable. This was a very special calling, which Laird truly enjoyed.
My brother Aaron was quite the character, always laughing and teasing everyone, including my father. After he was married and had his first son, Jared, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor.
But the doctor that had admitted him pulled Laird and I aside and said, this is not good.
Yeah.
And it's in a bad place, and it's a bombastic tumor. And he's not going to survive this, not long term.
Yeah.
We talked about it that night and cried. And we knew he was going to die. And we knew we needed to hold it together for the rest of the family. But Dad, those 4 years, whatever he could do to try to help, he did.
The Anchorage Temple was dedicated in 1999. My parents were called as temple workers. Mom served 7 years and my father 10. After my brother Aaron died in the year 2000, I went to work with my dad. The financial realities of death had become very real to me. What my father instilled in me was to always have integrity. Never sell a person what they do not need. If you are honest, you will always have good referrals. He also explained that it was very important to him to look after and give extra care to widows. He said, when I die and go to the other side, I need to be able to look their husbands in the eye, knowing I treated them right. Dad genuinely loved what he did. He used to come home every day to my mother and exclaim, "Guess who I helped today?" I don't think I have ever seen anyone have that much daily excitement for what they do. But he really believed in what he was doing and believed in helping people. As the years went by, my father continued to enjoy more and more grandchildren. He continued to fish. And take the grandkids fishing.
Krista, our oldest granddaughter, had a baby girl, Brianna, giving us our first great-grandchild, and 7 more would follow. Laird started calling us Gigi's for great-grandparents.
When my son Darshan was born, my dad's favorite thing to do was dance with him and hold him until he fell asleep. Dad had a way of making everyone feel special. Mom and Dad served a local service mission from 2017 to 2018, helping the poor and handicapped. In August of 2018, my father became very ill. Lewy body affects the nervous system, and he didn't always have control. We kept him at home, and my mother thankfully had caregivers and the church elders helping her. Every now and again, my father would feel well enough we could really be with him. During one of these moments, Dad told my mother that he felt so badly that she had to take care of him. And she took his hand and said, "You took care of me for all those years, and now it's my turn to take care of you. Our marriage is eternal, and I will never leave you." There are many words that my family uses to describe my father. Cheerful, charitable, fun, loving, loyal, and strong. There was a time I was confused because my father would love me no matter what I did, and I realized it was not because I was perfect, and it was not because our relationship or our lives were perfect. It was because my father's love for me was perfect. My mother was always perfect in my father's eyes because he loved her perfectly. We love you so much. Till we meet again.